Very interesting how Richard Belasco retired suddenly in December as Manitoba's chief electoral officer, only a few months after his buddy Gary Doer resigned his post as premier. One wonders how much it had to do with this guy, Jim Treller, a former NDP official agent, who blew the whistle on his former party for fudging election expenses in 1999.
The other thing is, we were charging for expenses we didn't have. So I don't think that's appropriate for any party.
Trouble is, every time the opposition asked then Finance Minister Greg Selinger in the House about how his election returns were fudged, his boss, Gary Doer, wouldn't let Selinger answer.
Yesterday, the Minister of Finance said that these transactions were deliberate and that, as he understands it, the practice had been going on for an extended period of time prior to 1999. I want to ask the Minister of Finance what steps, if any, he has taken as the trustee of taxpayers' money to recover money wrongly paid to the NDP in the period prior to 1999.
We asked Doer why he wouldn't let Selinger answer questions in the House about the election scandal. And we asked him a lot of other questions too he seemed to have trouble with.
How come you won't allow Greg Selinger to answer questions on the elections Manitoba?
He did answer a whole scrum.
No, but he's been asked quite a few questions now over the past week or more about the elections Manitoba issue. Questions directed specifically at him, but you won't allow him to answer them.
Well, it's not a question.
It's either you or Dave Chomiak who stand up.
Last week, and that
No, but in the House, why won't you allow him?
Well,
to
he
answer?
answered the questions last week to all of you for looked like I read the transcript.
But in the House,
like by a long period of time.
In the House, why won't you allow him to answer the questions in the House?
The government has people that answer to different questions, and it's our responsibility to do it that way, and we do that on whether it's this file or any other file.
But those are directed at him.
Yeah, but if you had
as
a
minister.
question asked about the debt to GDP ratio to one minister, the Minister of Finance would answer it. So that's what we do.
But this has to do with him, and the questions are directed right at him.
Yes, he did. He answered all those questions to all of you in the scrum last week.
No, but not in the House.
He answered them all to the public. You know, with the greatest respect, if you're elected and become a minister, you get to decide, or a premier, you get to decide some kind of discipline in terms of who answers and who doesn't.
Oh, that's
and it's
how it
not
works?
the same for this issue.
That's how it works? You get to decide whether he answers the question or not? That's directed at him?
When Doer first allowed Selinger to speak to the media about it, he wouldn't let him do it without Dave Chomiak by his side.
So I answered all the questions in the House because they are repeats of every question that had been asked for 2 hours in committee. The chief electoral officers have dealt with in his report.
Selinger eventually confirmed that this fraudulent activity had been going on for years and no one had been punished for it.
As I understand it, it had been a practice that had been going on for an extended period of time. And Elections Manitoba asked for that to be corrected.
Was anybody in your party disciplined for this wrongdoing?
I think there was a responsibility taken by the provincial party to resolve the matter with Elections Manitoba. In previous elections, it had been an acceptable practice. They had decided that it was no longer an acceptable practice. We accepted their judgment on that and resolved it to their satisfaction.
So nobody was disciplined?
We resolved it to the satisfaction of Elections Manitoba.
So no, the answer is no?
We resolved it to the satisfaction of Elections Manitoba.
We were told today that initially those donations were put where the union employees were put where they were supposed to in the donations, and then later they were switched to a separate column. That's pretty deliberate.
Yeah.
You think that was deliberate, that they switched columns to get more money?
Well, you know, you've got to discuss that with them. I don't crawl inside their head.
Shouldn't you discuss it with them? You're the finance minister. Why wouldn't you discuss it with them?
Well, because they had, in previous elections, had done that and it had been acceptable.
It's funny though how no one was ever charged by Elections Manitoba during this fraudulent activity, even though Selinger himself demanded a letter from his own party exonerating him of any wrongdoing.
Did you request a letter from the party exonerating you of any wrongdoing in this matter?
I asked a letter for them to take responsibility for the issue. They did, and they resolved it with Elections Manitoba.
Why?
Who's they?
The provincial.
Why did you ask for a letter?
Because I felt that it was them that was responsible for the practice, and that it was them that was responsible for correcting it.
So
and
you felt there was some wrongdoing in that? You wanted to make sure you weren't attached to it?
I wanted to make sure that the group that had followed this practice over time took responsibility to resolve it, and they accepted that responsibility and did resolve it with Elections Manitoba.
Which group?
Which group?
Yeah.
Who were you talking about?
The NDP.
But what members though? Were they disciplined? Like what members are you talking about?
No, the NDP, the people, the individual, the party secretary, who looked after this matter, took responsibility for it and resolved it in his discussions with Elections Manitoba.
Selinger continued to evade questions on the matter, even trying to convince the media that because his party banned union and corporate donations, the whole issue is now moot.
Do you think it was ethically correct?
What I think is the best thing we ever did when we came into office.
That wasn't the question. Do you think this practice of counting union workers as expenses rather than donations was ethically correct?
And I want to answer that by saying what I think is the best thing that we have done is to ban corporate and union donations. And I'm proud that as a political party that we've done that, which makes this issue moot in Manitoba.
But the issue is not the banning of donations, it's the disguising of donations as expenses.
The issue was that Elections Manitoba felt that the way these items had been reported should be changed, and they were changed, and the money was paid back. But it's no longer possible to do it at all because you can't make union and corporate donations anymore. So that's the larger story. Corporate and union donations are no longer legal in Manitoba.
The larger story, though, is that one of your own party former members, a former agent, says that there was an organized central plan to disguise donations in kind as expenses, which are two very different things.
Once again, Elections Manitoba resolved that matter through negotiations and discussions with the NDP of Manitoba. They had two independent legal opinions that looked at it, and they agreed that the resolution was to their satisfaction and the money was paid back. And it's Elections Manitoba as an independent office that decides that.
Who knows, maybe this scandal will one day go to a public inquiry and this whistleblower will get to tell his story under oath. In the meantime, have a happy retirement, Richard Belasco.